There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the 6th weekly update here for PegNet. If you've been following along, you know things move fast here. So we always got a full update coming up, and excited to share some of the recent news that we have. And we've got David Johnston here with me. David, you want to say hi?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey. All right, so I think we might have David Chapman and Paul Snow joining in throughout, but we wanted to get things started here on right at the top of 11:30 Eastern time. So, David, there's been a lot of traction activity. I don't think it's any secret that mining is of extreme popularity right now for PegNet, which is incredible. You want to share some highlights around what's been going on in the last week with the mining activity?
Sure. We finally crossed the 1 billion mark for 1 billion hashes per second, which is just incredible. I mean, it's equivalent to probably 50,000 laptops or desktops worth of hash power. So a lot of people have moved onto the network. Like I see WeChat and all the channels just blowing up with miner activity. So that's been really cool to see. I saw a pop yesterday where it spiked just above 1.5 billion hash per second. So that'd be 75,000 computers worth of hash power. So yeah, mining stablecoins has proved to be a popular activity. So that's been really awesome to see because this is critical to the security of the prices and the accuracy of the data is to have a lot of miners involved. Probably also on the mining side, we're saying like pools have arrived. Like if you look at the metadata, most people are reporting out of pools at this point. So Prosper Pool is the first open source pool, Oryx Pool. There's other people claiming other pool names. We don't know if those are confirmed, but you know it's cool to see sort of all the graph. I think somebody posted on Discord a pie of the distribution of 30% here and 20% there and all the different pools. But there's just so many advantages for the average user to smooth out their rewards to be part of a pool. It's sort of part of the maturity of any crypto ecosystem is to get to that point. So yeah, it didn't take long. About 3 months in, here we are. The pools have arrived, and so yeah, that's a big step for mining. It also makes it easier for the average person to get in because they don't have to deal with the Oracle prices. They can let the pool set up that infrastructure and they can just provide hash power from their computers. So the setup and the technical stuff's a little bit easier too. And that's what we want, right? As many people as possible participating in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I've been pretty chatty as the communities are growing across all the different platforms, wherever they're at, we're there to meet them. And one of the questions that's commonly brought up, and I reference your Medium article quite a bit, is how does that make things more secure? So since it's a common question, you wrote the article, I can bring it up and I can share it in the YouTube when we post this for afterwards. But do you want to touch on why that's significant?
Sure. I mean, it's similar to any proof of work chain where your biggest vulnerability is a 51% attack, right? Somebody shows up with more hash power than all the other participants and somehow tries to mess with the system. Fortunately for PegNet, because we're built on Factom and we're anchoring into Bitcoin and Ethereum, like PegNet, the software doesn't order the transactions, it doesn't handle the conversions. All of that is done at these lower protocol levels. The only thing the miners are doing is publishing the price data, right? And so there's sort of a nice separation of powers, if you will, between all the consensus layer stuff, which is being done by Factom and Ethereum, and the price oracle stuff, which is what the PegNet miners are providing. But there's still an opportunity, even if a 51% attack on PegNet couldn't change anything about the, sends or receives or anything like that. It could still try to alter the prices, right? Big guy swoops in. I say gold is $10 instead of $1,500, right? Tries to get extra gold tokens or something. One, there's something in the software that prevents that, which is the grading algorithm is tossing out data where somebody submits a price that's too far off the expected range. So they would be not winning mining rewards at a minimum because their price is going to get tossed out because it's too far from the median that other people see. But the biggest protection beyond the software rails is actually having lots of people happily mining and making money from providing the hash power, right? It's the best thing you can have to protect the system is a lot of honest miners that are happily, getting a return for their electricity and equipment. Because what you're saying, and this is sort of the magic that works so well with Bitcoin and Ethereum, is the combined economic incentive of all those people is greater than the economic incentive of some bad actor, right? Who's trying to act alone and attack the system. He's trying to overwhelm the resources of everybody else who's trying to protect the system and is paid to secure the network. So that's the magic of proof of work. And, there's some edge cases where there have been small chains, especially if they're using an algorithm that's already popular, where it doesn't take a lot of effort for, a big miner to go and mess with that small chain. Fortunately, because PegNet is using LXR Hash, it's a hash that nobody else was using. And so nobody's got an ASIC or some big, army of computers that can go after this chain, because everybody's starting from zero because they're all learning LXR. They're learning how to optimize for the number of cores, and they have to have 2 gigabytes of RAM and all these things. And so we're in a good position. The PegNet software, I think picking a unique hash was a pretty smart idea. Not only does it give us a bigger community because people can participate with their CPU, but it also has the effect of giving us extra security because there's no large incumbent that could just sweep in and have 90% of the hash power or something like that.
So I don't know if you know the answer to this. It's LXR hash completely brand new, or has it been used elsewhere?
It's not brand new to cryptography. The functions have been around for a while. What's new is using it for a proof of work algorithm. So the tech has been around for a while. Paul had been looking at it for a long time. He did an analysis. Paul Snow, the inventor of PegNet, did an analysis of sort of the different benefits he wanted from a hash. He wanted low power consumption. He wanted something CPU friendly. He picked this one because it's RAM bound. It doesn't matter how much computation you have. It's about those 2 gigs of RAM and being able to build the hash out of memory. And so, it's not brand new. Just like Bitcoin, the primitives that Satoshi used have been around for decades, right? And it's the way he put them together that was really genius, right? And aligning the economic incentives and all the rest is what made it work. And so what Paul said is, oh, wow, there is this hash that hasn't been used yet for proof of work. People had looked at LXR hash and it wasn't the best for one particular cryptographic purpose, but he's like, I don't need it for that particular cryptographic purpose. I need it just for proof of work. So if that's my criteria, this is a great candidate for going and using LXR hash. So, that's kind of the genesis of how it all happened. But I think it was a really good choice because it protected the network, lets us build a big community. And so far, nobody's been able to create an ASIC. Paul would point out that if somebody does, they'll be solving some fundamental problems in computer science around, memory and computation. If they do that, great, like that benefits everybody. But he thinks it'll stay on the test for a while. But even if it only keeps unoptimized for 6 or 12 months, that's still a huge win. That gives us a lot of time to build an organic community while it's still, sort of a level playing field for everybody. So, people are skeptical when you say, oh, this is unique. They're like, yeah, that's what everybody else said. But even so, people don't typically build an ASIC until there's a lot of money, right? It's not cheap to build, custom chips, right? And so eventually if somebody gets there when, PegNet grows to a large scale, that's a good problem to have at that point. So, then it's sort of like, oh, well, they optimized it, but we got to build a huge community in the process.
Yeah, fair enough on that. And I'm just going to dovetail off of that with the having that huge community, and two things. One is, while PegNet is moving at feels like breakneck speed with everything week over week, it's still so early. It is so early, and definitely I think anyone who's watching this who hasn't been keeping up on that, to just know how early you are getting in, even though we're talking about all these milestones that we're hitting as a community. Just know.
We'll probably smile and be like, oh, 1 billion, that's cute. I remember those days, before it hit like a trillion hash per second, but today it's a big milestone. So yeah.
If my memory serves me right, weren't we supposed to have a PegNet party for when we crossed a billion hash?
I think we did say something about it. So, cheers. Almost showed up on Turkey Day. So, we'll call that our official PegNet party right there.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving for our friends in the United States here. I know David, myself, we're looking forward to feasting with our family and taking it slower than usual, maybe.
Tryptophan is a hell of a drug.
Yes. What else can I say that's going on with the community right now?
I saw somebody posted the Explorer just went live. So we now have a PegNet Explorer, which
Let me bring that up.
Awesome. Yeah. Let's share that on the screen. So you'll need to grab an address and search the address, and you can see sort of the transaction history. So if anybody wants to check it out, it's pExplorer.factom.com. So this is software donated by the group at Factom, and they coded this up, and it gives you a way of looking at the outputs, right? So that's the Explorer, and shows the inputs, the outputs, the factoids, all the rest. And I think there's a P version of it if you want to. So if you pop the letter P on that and you want to look up a particular address, you can see the PegNet assets. So if you have pegged gold or pegged dollars or whatever, then you can pull up the transaction history. This is nice because it means you don't need a command line interface. There you go. So you would just pop a address into the search field there. But this is nice because you don't have to run a command line. You don't have to have a fully synced node. Somebody sends you some peg. Great, just give me the address and I can look at it on the blockchain. So that's great. That's a big milestone. It was also a prerequisite for getting listed on the CoinGeckos and CoinMarketCaps of the world. So I think having an Explorer, sort of checks the box for a lot of those sites that want to make it easy for people to look at their balances. So just another piece of infrastructure that I'm very glad is now live.
Yeah, super big kudos. Thank you to all of the developers that were working on that. And so that just went live yesterday. We made that announcement across the channels. But I think what's really important is, as we've been preaching how this is all the transactions are on chain, so it's fully auditable. This now is a way to much more easily verify those transactions between the pegged assets in the network. Yep. So yeah, and speaking of why it's important for the CoinGeckos and Blockfolios of the world, we are now on CoinGecko.com live. I don't have that.
That was just this morning, right?
That was just this morning, so I need to get caught up on my morning news yet. I'm still digesting a little bit.
Yeah, I saw the Australians were excitedly posting a few hours before the rest of us were up.
Right. So we're now live on CoinGecko.com. There are a couple of nuances to yet work out before it's as accurate of a reflection as what you're going to get when you go to PegNetMarketCap.com. but I think that that's a huge step, and already it's creating more interest and fever, and we've got community members, oh, I can get you listed on here, and so the more that that just happens, it's that snowball effect, and it's good for the community because it raises our visibility up.
Yep.
So happy about
Absolutely.
that.
Well, and on that topic, I saw another good Discord pop up the other day for CPU Miners Club. And so it looks like there's a bunch of CPU miners evaluating tons of different projects on there. So if anybody on the PegNet side wants to join, I know a bunch of people have jumped in to their Discord, and there's a PegNet channel now. And so we've been posting updates there and kind of showing their community what we're building. So, anybody that's living on Discord like me these days can jump in there as well. But yeah, no, it's really cool to kind of find all these adjacent communities that we can, hook into and update about what we're doing.
Absolutely. And I mean, if we reminisce about early Bitcoin days and Ethereum days, and how those were all organic communities that just, this is how that works. And PegNet is an organic community. And so when we have a number of people from different parts of the world, different insights, backgrounds, experiences, all of a sudden putting PegNet on the radar of these different groups, that raises the overall social value, et cetera, of PegNet.
Yeah. And I was going to say, PegNet is a pure DeFi project. And so it's cool to see us starting to interact with other DeFi projects. Specifically, I saw there a bunch of Twitter stuff going back and forth between PegNet people and the Chainlink guys. And, I think there's a cool opportunity because they effectively have a marketplace for price APIs. And now PegNet provides 30 additional prices that you could pull from an API. So I'd love to see somebody doing an integration there where all the people running Ethereum scripts could start pulling proof of work verified oracles from PegNet for Chainlink type integrations. And so, that would be great to see. And there's probably opportunities if we look through the Chainlink marketplace, if there are additional data sets that the PegNet community needs, or if we're adding assets that we don't have access to right now, that could be another good place to pull data from and provide data back to after it's been through our process of grading and proof of work verification. So we're sort of adding all these decentralized oracles to the world. Let's get that in the hands of everybody building smart contracts. Right. So I thought that was really cool. So I hope somebody runs with that fairly soon, because I remember being on stage with Sergey in 2016 in Tokyo, and we had done an integration with smartcontracts.com and Factom, so you could trigger an Ethereum smart contract with data published on Factom. So it was super early, kind of even too early for like a lot of the infrastructure, but it was a cool proof that like this is where we're headed. And so now we have a really cool use case that's getting a lot of traction. Let's do that again, but at scale inside this PegNet use case, with all of these proof of work verified oracles, not just something anybody's publishing to Factom. So it's like a cool reincarnation of what we were working on like 3 years ago.
So that's another question that keeps coming up regularly throughout the communities as they're growing, is new members are trying to understand what that relationship really is between Factom and the Factoids and PegNet. Do you want to address that one?
Sure. So Factoids are the token that powers the Factom ecosystem. And with a Factoid, you can convert into entry credits. So this two-token system was really something pioneered by Factom back in 2015, and it has a bunch of advantages. So entry credits are always a tenth of a penny. They've always been pegged to that price, if you will. And so this is a native capability inside of Factom, is you already had proofs that, okay, I took these Factoids, I converted them into entry credits. And importantly, entry credits are non-transferable. They're assigned to one address and they can't be sent anywhere else. So they're purely a software license. They're not a cryptocurrency. They can't be sent to anybody. They don't have any market value. They can't be traded, right? And for, you know, a company that, you know, doesn't have the infrastructure to touch tokens or, you know, deal with the security around that and just wants to write data to the protocol, entry credits gave them a really easy way. I mean, there's a reason, if you've seen all the news articles, that Factom wins so many of these enterprise contracts with, you know, big governments and big companies. It's because it solved that fundamental problem for them really early on, right? And so with PegNet, we've essentially extended that capability. And so if you've got factoids, now you can convert them into PEG factoids, which you can then convert into PEG gold or PEG dollars or PEG Bitcoin, whatever you want, right? And it's using that same on-chain process to go from the factoid. It technically, if you look into the code, it's going into an entry credit address. So you're proving the same way we've done since 2015 that value has forever been moved into the network, right? It can't go back, right? So it's forever you have an auditable proof that value moved into the network. And then from there, you can transfer it to anyone else. So it was just kind of cool how Factom already had all of this infrastructure in place. And this allowed us to extend, you know, the software at PegNet extended that capability to all these new assets. So yeah, no, that's sort of the relationship. And so that's why Factom is the entry point for PegNet, because the Factom blockchain isn't aware of, you know, all the entries on Bitcoin or some other chain. It's aware of its own auditable history. So that's why it's the entry point. For PEG, right, the PEG token is what we reward to miners. So the PegNet software gives 5,000 PEG every block to miners. And it's also the arbitrage mechanism in the system. So if you see a spread between the prices, in the near future, as PEG goes free floating on all these exchanges, it's going to be very easy to arbitrage between NAP asset and PEG, right? Because PEG is the only variable token in the system. Everything else is referencing some other price, but PEG is always at its exchange price as soon as it goes free floating. And so that means that it's the easiest pair to arbitrage to. So it provides two important functions, the system, the mining reward, and the arbitrage function. And so if you're trying to think through in Grok, like, okay, what's the utility? It depends on how much usage there is of the system and how much need there is of arbitrage to balance all the prices in the system. So if you think there's going to be a lot of trading, a lot of volume, a lot of usage of pegged assets, then PEG is what's being used for that. If you think a lot of people are going to want to take crypto and put it into the PegNet ecosystem, that's what factoids are being used for, right? And so depending on what that balance is, depends on how much each of them will be used. I mean, so far, if you check Factoshi website, I'll do a refresh here. Wow, okay, it's jumped. We've seen conversions of 384,990.35 factoids into PegNet. So people have converted, call it almost 4% of all factoids into the PegNet system. So this has actually caused factoids to go deflationary. And you can see the supply of factoids has just fallen precipitously since PegNet has kicked off. If you go to the factoid tab, it has a nice little graph. If you change it to like a 1 month or a 3 month cadence, you can see all the conversions that people have been doing, and you can also see below that how the factoid supply has been, basically falling off a cliff as people convert more and more tokens into the system. So we got almost to 10 million factoids, and now it's down to like 9.5 or whatever. So anyway, that's the relationship. So if you're bullish on more assets moving into the system, people are using factoids for that purpose. If you're bullish on lots of arbitrage and trading in the system, that's what PEG is used for in the system. So that's the difference. You need both functions in the system, and that's why it's those particular tokens. It isn't an arbitrary choice. That's the tech stack we have available to accomplish this. And so that's how we keep everything on chain.
I'd love to hear too, because there are different reasons why people would join the PegNet community.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear from anybody if they've been testing out the arbitrage opportunities or trading opportunities, or if they know of a trader that would be interested. I'd love to talk to them and get some kind of case study and more data and insights there.
Yeah, I noticed there's a big community on TradingView, which is a tool a lot of people in crypto use to build out trading strategies. It would be great to get an integration between TradingView and PegNet. So if people could just take their existing scripts and strategies on TradingView and basically trigger an action on PegNet to make a trade based on that view, they could gain the benefits on the PegNet that there's no fee, there's no slippage, right? They have as much liquidity as assets they have in the network, right? So if they want to move $1 million here to there, there's no friction in that process. And so, yeah, I think it would be awesome to see that done. I know people are running a lot of experiments. I think people are writing some software, but it would be great to see more of that.
Yeah, if anyone's watching this and they have gone to CoinGecko, one of the things that will work out with them is it listed, I think, 1 billion supply or something like that. And I think it's important to highlight that the the PegNet supply is uncapped. And what I mean by that is basically, and you'll probably do a better job than I have explaining it, but I'll give it a try here. That basically it's with all those assets in the network. The reason that they are stable assets is because of the liquidity factor there. So essentially, it would take an awful lot to manipulate any one of those markets. So they're essentially liquid. The price doesn't fluctuate based on how much you're trying to transact with. And because of that, I mean, you have liquidity in the trillions of dollars of these assets around the world. And so the PEG token would have to meet that level, that threshold before it would be capped, right? Or no, I'm
So
confusing
one,
people.
one way to think about the scarcity in the PegNet system is it's limited by the number of assets in the system. So nobody can get PEG unless they've taken some crypto factoids and converted into pegged assets and gone in, or they bought peg off in exchange, right? So the scarcity is driven by the fact that it's limited to the tokens that are available in the system and that 5,000 block reward for miners every 10 minutes. So the number of peg will increase. It's not arbitrarily limited at a billion. Maybe they just thought that was a nice round number on CoinGecko, but I'm sure we'll get that updated. I would compare it to an Ethereum model. So Ethereum doesn't have a halving schedule. So it doesn't sort of have this thing hanging over it where eventually the mining reward goes away. It'll always be there. And they just basically fixed it and said, okay, this is the reward and it's going to go on forever. And that's worked out fairly well for Ethereum. So I think emulating that type of model is good. I've seen some people have made proposals in the PegNet improvement proposal section around doing halving for PegNet. I don't know. There's kind of arguments on both sides. I don't have a strong opinion there. And other people are sort of putting in a lot of cool PegNet proposals. In fact, I do want to mention that for developers. I'm writing up an article right now on crypto tithing. And this idea of taking 10% and using it for a good cause, and so I've decided to take 10% of the PEG, just myself personally, and put together a pool for rewarding developers. And so if people have seen the PegNet improvement proposals, the PIPs, the framework that I put out there a few weeks ago, people working on those, I will be figuring out a schedule and also sort of a structure for giving regular developer rewards to thank you for building PIP 42 that improved PegNet in this way. Go be awesome, here's some PEG, and let's keep that cycle going, because I really want to emulate, Ethereum managed to get 3 communities to work together. They got miners, they got capital, and they got developers. And they did it from the foundations, right? It wasn't they just held, a token sale. It wasn't just that they allowed mining. They even rewarded developers in the Genesis block for code they contributed to GitHub, right? So from the beginning, people are like, how did they get all the developers? They rewarded all the developers that showed up and put their time and energy into the system. And then those people benefited as Ethereum was adopted. And all of a sudden, they wanted to put more time and energy into that system. And so I think we've got to build that same thing. We've clearly got the excitement of the mining community. Great. Let's keep doing that, right? And we've got excitement from people adding value to the system. People are converting in all these factoids into the system. But we've also got to have that developer community. And I don't think there's sort of like a magic way to build that into blocks or rewards without sort of creating a lot of governance and big sort of overarching administration. And so to avoid all of that, I'm like, no, let's just do it on an individual basis. I'll put out this article. I'll challenge all the mining pools and the miners and the people involved. Like, look, if you want this to be a very successful project, let's incentivize developers. I'll take the first example, and here is a pool of PEG let's use for that purpose. And people can decide what they want to reward, right? So it becomes a marketplace for rewarding developers versus like a central entity. So anyway, I just was thinking about that yesterday. I hadn't talked about it publicly, but I'm kind of excited about that idea, and I've got to write up that article on crypto tithing.
I'm excited about that, and you're so spot on. And I see things. I'm always looking at like cultural trends and social behaviors. Like I do that for fun. I do that for my work. I mean, and so you're spot on with that and how to really that incentivization mechanism built into the framework of building PegNet is going to take it leaps and bounds farther, and which effectively spills over to everybody else's benefit and value. Just having candid conversation here, I have no clue what it takes to build a mining pool, but is there an opportunity to build a mining pool that is dedicated to allocating a certain percentage of those mining rewards to developers specifically? And it kind of becomes almost in a positive way incestuous, right? Where you got the developers are probably mining on there to generate more rewards for themselves. And
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. We've talked about the idea a few times of doing sort of charity, and this isn't charity. I value the people that write code and build out these systems, but it's the same kind of idea. Yeah, you could potentially put it in as a feature of one of the mining pools, and there was already an open source mining pool with Prosper Pool. And so Prosper Pool, you could potentially basically point a percentage of the rewards to something like this. And you could join a pool that's supporting developers on the system, right? So yeah, no, I think that's a cool idea. It's something that I think, really needs to get implemented. And it would solve a lot of issues around, there's sort of a consistently, developers are kind of underfunded in a lot of ecosystems. And what happens is they all end up getting employed by a couple of companies, right? Every company picks up their token open source developer or whatever, and you end up with just a few full-time open source developers. But it would be much better if we had a regular and sort of expected reward for, giving developers resources based on what they've done. Now, I do want to say this can be done well or it can be done poorly. I think we reward people on delivering. So like it's a competition versus, I have this idea, right? Because if you reward people at the idea stage, it's really tough to vet, is it a good idea? Will they come through? Will they, produce it? But if we're rewarding effect, then, whoever gets across that finish line, whoever wins the competition is getting more and more of those rewards on on the effect of what they've built. So I think there's different models I need to look at, but maybe we can touch more on that in the next week. I'm sure it'll evolve, but yeah, I'd like to keep it as decentralized as possible. So there's not like a formal foundation or something, but this is just a cultural part of what we do, and the miners are doing it, the people in the system are doing it, and everybody's, you know, funding their favorite cool open source addition to the protocol.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I love it. And you want to keep the ethos going. And to that, we have to do a better job of branding ourselves with DeFi the world. That's what we stand for, right? And it's a little play on words there, DeFi the world and decentralized finance the world.
Yep.
Let me think, what else is there to cover for this week?
That's a lot of the big stuff.
There is a lot of that's been going on. For those watching, I also get a lot of questions coming through on how to buy, which is a great indication of just more people joining the community. How do I get PEG? We are listed on 2 exchanges, a DEX and a centralized exchange. So we're listed on Vinex or Vinex and also Vitex. So those links will all be below, and just want to put that out there. Other things going on is coming up. We're working on a trading competition, so assembling that. So if you are a trader, be on the lookout. We'll be sharing some news around that. And if you're in New York, you're watching this, I got confirmation on December 18th, there will be a meetup. So anybody in New York City that would be interested to join the meetup, we'll be sharing some more details around that soon. If you're interested to host a meetup, let us know. We'll get you whatever you need. If it's a remote speaker, resources, content, whatever it is.
Sweet. And I see a question from Pearly. I think it's a good one. Could you use smart contract to lock up rewards for developers, rewards getting released once the task is solved? Potentially. I think that's a good way to approach it, though. I'd want to sort of not build it into necessarily the protocol itself. It would be a cool tool for individuals to use. But again, I want to avoid sort of like a central authority and a bunch of administration for like, a process around this. But a more flexible thing where people can put out PIPs, PegNet improvement proposals, and hey, this would be awesome to see. Somebody could jump on that, code it up, and then build consensus with the community that this is a good improvement and it's going to work with everything that's already out there. And then once that gets implemented and goes live, then the person writing the PIP could potentially even say what they would reward, and you've sort of got this cool cycle where you have people making proposals, people coding them up. Coders could potentially code things up. I remember one of the ways Vitalik got started in the Bitcoin ecosystem was he was writing articles, and he would release an abstract. This is back when he was at Bitcoin Magazine. He would release an abstract, or maybe even before that. It was before he was with the magazine. He would write articles on projects and crypto subjects, and he would release the abstract. And if you paid a certain amount, he would release the whole article. That's how he made a few of his first Bitcoin, was writing articles about crypto stuff, and built a great reputation for being a very neutral, very intellectual sort of and unbiased opinion on the tech that was being proposed, whereas most people were being very tribal and this is great and that's terrible. He would take a very neutral approach. And so, I think that's a great idea. It's a concept that's been around in Austrian economics and free market circles for a while. I want to be able to propose something and somebody build it and give them an automated reward. So if somebody wants to build a smart contract for that, that would be really cool to have. And especially, I think that would be easier once the Ethereum signatures get added to PegNet or PegNet D. So I know the developers are working on that right now. There's a PIP right now for adding Ethereum signatures. It might take a few weeks, but it's not that far away. And once you have that, then it's easy to move either Ethereum tokens, PegNet tokens inside the same wallet with the same private key. that's probably when writing that smart contract would make sense, or shortly thereafter. So maybe 3-4 weeks from now, somebody wants to jump on that. That'd be cool infrastructure to have, and I would happily put up some PEG into putting one of those contracts. So yeah, no, that's a cool suggestion. Thanks, Burley.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what the benefit of a community and open source is you get this collaboration of all these different backgrounds and experiences, and
Yep.
great mind share going on. I want to share my screen really quickly. For you keep mentioning the PIPs, and which is a PegNet improvement proposal. Just give me a second here.
So, somebody noted to me that it's not the first PIP. Apparently, there's Python improvement proposals, which is where like originally the Bitcoin improvement proposal was copied. So it's gotten like full circle now, where Bitcoin copied them, and we looked at the Bitcoin stuff. And we're like, oh, let's do that. So.
Yeah. So if you're watching this and you've been wondering a little bit more about PIPs or how to get involved with it, and to view the other activity and proposals that have been submitted, I'll share this Medium article in the YouTube description below, and they can access here in the Google Doc and see that.
Awesome. Sounds good, Katie.
Cool. Well, not sure what else there is to cover, but a lot of work to keep our heads down on, and looking forward to meeting more and new community members in the Discord, certainly where it's most active. But my golly, the WeChat has grown, I guess like 50+%. Our Discord has grown over 50-60% in the last 2 weeks. Telegram the same. Now these are still small communities. We're not boasting like 10,000 community members yet, but what I can say is they're super active.
Yep.
There's a Korean community, a Russian community. I mean, you guys just let us know what language you prefer to speak in, and we'll point you in the right direction.
I noticed somebody translated the white paper into Chinese. We should probably put a link somewhere on one of the PegNet websites. Actually, I see on the call right now is Hema CEO. He runs one of the websites, pegged.network. So Hema, go check out that Chinese translation. We should get that on the website. He's got all the links for like the whole community. He's got like the bootstrap file. Just go to pegged.network and you'll see all the stuff he's got on there from the whole community. But that'd be great. Yeah, no, and I know there's somebody translating the presentation into, I know somebody's translating the presentation into Russian. So we'll have hopefully a Russian version of the PegNet presentation to add to our German, Korean, Japanese, English, Chinese translations soon enough. So.
Yeah, I mean,
sure, will do.
Go ahead. Sorry, Hema, go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, sure, I'll do that.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. I was actually on that website yesterday or the other day, and I noticed there was quite a bit of updates. I was looking for the brand guidelines, and there's a ton of information. It's a great job on that website, Hema. There's a lot of resources in there. I don't think the brand guidelines were on there, but not that it should be, but
hey, why not?
Why not? Why not? Yes. But yeah, so I don't know what more to say. If you looking for information, we've got information, and it's growing like wildfire all over the place.
Cool. You did mention the exchanges. You can also join the Discord. I know there's at least one OTC out of Hong Kong that is now offering pegged assets. So if you want to get in contact, probably just join the Discord, drop a message, and somebody can hook you up with the OTC, the over-the-counter trader of pegged assets. So Vinex and Vitex are great. I think they're international based, and I think the OTC takes US people too. So if that makes it easier for you, or if you have larger buys or sells, then that's why people use OTCs. So it's another piece of infrastructure, but I was happy to see that.
My last call to action here is one of the things I want to work on over our US holidays here with lots of turkey and tryptophan is putting together the framework for a brand ambassador kind of program. I don't know exactly how that will shape up, but I'm certainly looking for people who are really interested in the project, have gained a lot of familiarity with it, different time zones and geographies. And if you're interested to get more information or work on collaborating and building out that program, we'd love to talk to you. And I think it'll be an important part of the next level of growth that we're looking to achieve here.
Awesome. Sounds good, Katie.
Other than that, happy Thanksgiving, everyone. This is a big time for family and slowing down at the end of the year, but I don't think PegNet is showing any signs of that.
Cool.
Hey, so David, last question.
Yo.
For the holidays,
Mhm.
we're approaching 2020.
Mhm.
Bitcoin's been around for just over 10 years or so now.
Yeah.
PegNet has been around for 3 months now. What are you doing for your family to pull more people into the ecosystem? Anything special around the holidays that you do around cryptocurrency?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's when you see all the relatives and everybody asks about what's going on. I keep pretty in contact with my relatives, so it won't be a surprise what I'm working on or what the latest, passion is. So, it's been cool to include family in that over the years. I remember writing an email to my family in 2012 and explaining Bitcoin for the first time and saying, we now have an honest way to save money in a system that can't be inflated. And so, it took me about a year to get them on board with Bitcoin. So, they're still early, and that worked out. So, they're happy about that. And so when I told them about new things, they're usually interested to hear what's going on. But no, it's cool. Now, if you've got a relationship with your family where you can, tell them what you're excited about, then by all means, spread the word. But, it seems to have taken on a life of its own. I've got people reaching out of the woodwork about, hey, I hear PegNet is taking off. How do I get involved? How do I add value to the project? So yeah, jump in the Discord and, we'll all be, cheersing over, different alcoholic beverages or, turkey and ham and all the rest. So happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays, everyone. And until next week, we'll see you in the Discord.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.